Ike is a powerful magician who serves as a commander in the Demon Lord's army. With his skill and power, he has become an invaluable member of the demon army, but there's just one problem: he is secretly a human. During a war, the orc troops are able to break through the walls of a castle thanks to some well-placed explosions near the base of the wall which Ike provided them with, and as all this is going on, he is watching from above along with the orc leader, who is greatly pleased with the results of his troops' invasion after following the advice of Ike. However, Ike isn't surprised by the outcome at all, since victory was all but assured once he was assigned to oversee this operation. Inside the castle grounds, the humans and demons are locked in deadly combat, but the demons are much better equipped to win with their innate strength, so the human soldiers are being slaughtered. And while all this is going on, the Knight Captain is up in the castle, watching his men die one by one from the safety of a castle window and probably regretting the day he chose to sign up as a knight. Just then, he realizes he is not alone in the room, so he turns around and finds that Ike has somehow managed to sneak in. The Knight Captain knows he is pretty much screwed now, so he turns to face Ike and asks who he is. Ike introduces himself as the commander of the Demon Lord's 7th Undead Brigade, and he tells the Knight Commander he only has a few options left. His soldiers are nearly all dead, so Ike tells him he likes this territory and he wants it, so we can do this the easy way or the hard way. The choice is yours. The Knight Captain ain't going out like a wuss, so he tells Ike that none of those options work for him as he lunges forward for a desperate attack. But Ike wasn't surprised by this at all, since he already expected to have to do it the hard way. He quickly casts a point-blank spell which strikes the Knight Captain and incapacitates him. Ike has officially won this war, but when the orc leader comes into the room to congratulate him on his victory, and while the normal thing to do for a demon commander at this point would be to execute all the surviving members of the army, but Ike has other plans as he instructs the orc leader to provide first aid for the Knight Commander as well as any humans that surrendered. Ike was being watched by a witch through her crystal ball, and she is surprised that he was able to take down Castle Arsenal with just a single brigade and a week of prep time, so she's interested in the potential Ike shows. Back at the castle, Ike creates a barrier around himself so he can avoid being watched further, and once he finally has some privacy, he thinks to himself that he feels guilty about hurting so many people, even if it was necessary to win the battle. He will never truly get used to the bloodshed associated with war, because while it should be second nature to a demon, Ike is only a human in disguise. His teacher, Romber, was a great mage, but he also knew a lot about the world and the advanced civilization that once lived in it. One day, Romber found Ike as a baby and decided to take him in just for fun, and over the course of the years Ike spent with Romberg, he was taught all the magic and knowledge Romberg had at his disposal. But Romberg's last wish before he died of old age was that Ike should never tell anyone about the ancient civilization, since people would bring disaster if they knew about it. There was also one other thing Romberg had asked of him. It was for Ike to never let himself be seen without his robe or mask, because if he is ever found out to be a human, the Demon Lord wouldn't spare him. From that day forward, Ike has never taken off his mask, and even now, he is only able to remove it because of the powerful barrier he erected around the room. With the barrier up, it prevents anyone from entering the room without his permission, but unfortunately, it doesn't apply to people who are already inside the room. Ike looks down and sees the maid who had been hiding under the desk, and she begs him not to kill her since she won't speak a word to anyone about his secret, but then she accidentally hits her head on the desk and falls over. Ike checks on her and she seems to still be alive, but he really wishes she wasn't, since he had managed to keep his identity secret for over 20 years at this point. So why does the first person to find out his secret have to be a clumsy maid? Just then, the orc leader knocks at the door because he wants to talk to Ike, so he will have to deal with the maid problem later. Outside, the orc leader tells Ike that they have managed to seize the castle successfully, but he finds it strange that Ike is letting so many humans live. Ike tells him it isn't a problem, since the new Demon Lord doesn't particularly care about your kill count as long as you get the job done. The orc understands, but he and the others were hoping to slaughter all the humans and burn the village to the ground, but Ike questions what the purpose of doing that would be, especially since if they kill everyone, then there will be no one left to pay taxes. Arsenal is a trading city, so who would do all the trading if they killed all the humans? Just then, Ike and the orc run into a couple of humans who wish to speak to Ike. The orc begins yelling at them for daring to speak to the great Ike directly, but Ike says it is fine and asks the village chief to speak. The chief has accepted that the town is now under the control of the demon army, so he wants to know how much they are expecting to pay in taxes to the demon lord. Ike tells him they can just pay the normal amount they always paid, but he makes it clear that if any of them ever resist the demon lord for any reason, then there would be no mercy for them. Just then, Ike notices something is wrong, and a moment later, he gets teleported into a dark room with a giant monster standing behind him with devious intentions. Ike jumps out of the way to evade the incoming backshots, and it looks like this isn't the first time something like this has happened since Ike complains to the witch that he had asked her not to summon him out of nowhere like this. Since he is already here, Ike decides to take out the monster by using his staff to cast a powerful spell, and he destroys the golem in a single hit. The witch is impressed with Ike's ability since she was pretty confident in the strength of that golem, and we finally find out that her name is Sapphiro. She is Ike's direct superior in the demon army, and also the only demon who knows that he is actually a human. Ike asks her to please just send a messenger next time she wants to talk to him, but she finds it entertaining to catch him off guard with teleportation. Ike just accepts that he's going to have to keep dealing with Sapphiro's BS, so he asks her if she summoned him here because of the battle with Arsenum. She tells him that's not why she called him here, since her familiars couldn't have told her everything she needed to know about the battle. She is perfectly fine with how Ike took control of the city and how he chose to spare the humans, but then Ike wonders why she bothered summoning him at all, so Sapphiro informs him that Demon Lord Daracuten wishes to see him in person. Ike is shocked to hear this, since he would be the first brigade commander to ever be given the honor of meeting him, but Ike still wonders why Daracuten would want to see him. Sapphiro assumes it must be because of Ike's impressive feat of capturing Arsenum in only 1 week, so she's going to take him to the Demon Lord's castle now. Ike wasn't expecting to have to go immediately, but he puts his hand on Sapphiro's shoulder and she teleports them both away. Meanwhile, back in the castle, the maid has finally regained consciousness. She gets up and tries to walk away, but as she does so, she finds that she is still trapped inside Ike's barrier. She knows there's no way she's getting through a barrier like this, so she looks around the room and finds a plate of food along with a note left by Ike. He wrote for her to eat the food and wait for him to return, so the maid does exactly that, and it's so delicious that she ends up pouncing on the plate. At the same time, Ike and Sapphiro have just arrived at the Demon Lord's castle, and the strong miasma surrounding the castle is slightly affecting Ike since he is human, but he powers through it and keeps walking towards the castle. At the gate, there are guards posted, so Ike asks Sapphiro if the guards check everyone who comes to the castle, and she informs him that they indeed inspect everyone who comes here. Ike is now worried since his identity will be found out as soon as the guard makes him remove his mask, but Sapphiro tells him she will handle it. She uses some of her magic to surround Ike in a terrifying aura, and once he reaches the guards, they have nothing but respect for his power. They know Ike is the grandson of Romberg. And with training from such a great mage, it is no wonder to them that Ike is so powerful. Ike and Sapphiro are allowed entry into the castle with no further questions, and after a while of walking, Ike asks how long it's going to take before they reach the audience room. So she tells him they are almost there, but Ike is really wishing he could fly like Sapphiro in a situation like this. He has always been jealous of her flight magic, and while he can use the spell itself, he doesn't have as much control over it as she does, so the most he can do is jump really high with it. They eventually reach the audience room, so Sapphiro tells Ike to wait outside a little while she talks to the Demon Lord first. Once she heads inside, Ike thinks about how the current Demon Lord, Daracuten, managed to turn the war around and give the demons the upper hand simply by participating in a single battle. He is the strongest demon, and rumors speak of him as a cruel and cold lord, so he would probably kill anyone whom he grew to dislike. On the flip side, though, he is also known to be one who can recognize talent in spite of whatever weaknesses one may have. His new approach to running things revolutionized the demon army, since demons are naturally born with the instinct to fight among themselves at the slightest inconvenience. Daracuten, who accomplished all of that in his time as the Demon Lord, and now Ike has to meet him. Ike hears Sapphiro calling for him to enter, so he walks into the throne room, and as he greets the Demon Lord, he is surprised to find that the Demon Lord is actually a girl. Daracuten praises Ike for his ability to capture Arsenum in only 1 week, and he thanks her for the kind words, but he doesn't think he deserves that much credit. The Daracuten finds Ike's humility quite odd as it reminds her of how a human would act, and Ike immediately regrets opening his mouth since he almost blew his cover just now. Luckily, Sapphiro recovers for him and explains that Ike was raised by the great magician Romberg, and Romberg was known to be quite humble, so that would explain where Ike learned humility from. She also thinks that Ike might be smarter than she had initially thought and thus chose to avoid needlessly killing the humans even after he conquered Arsenum. But right now, Ike is kind of regretting the fact that he didn't kill those humans like a regular demon would, since it is drawing unwanted attention to him now. He asks for permission to speak and explains to Darrow that he spared the humans because while they may fear terror, they won't obey it for long, so he felt it would be better to avoid killing them as much as possible so they can keep their sense of normalcy and remain productive. Darrow asks if that is the opinion Romberg held as well, and Ike says yes. He has only been speaking with her for a few minutes now, but he can already tell that Darrow must have knowledge about the ancient civilizations that Romberg told Ike about, and she used that knowledge to form the demon army into what it is today. Darrow teleports from her throne and lands in front of Ike, saying that he is definitely different from most demons, but the next time they meet, she would like to see what his face looks like under that mask. She then teleports behind him and says she expects to see more good results from him in the future, and as soon as she is out of the room, Ike collapses out of nervousness. Sapphiro makes fun of him for being so nervous in front of Darrow, but while maybe a strong magician, he is still a wimp. What had him so nervous was the fact that Darrow could tell that the mask wasn't his real face, but at least she doesn't know that he's a human yet. Sapphiro also mentions that he is getting a reward from Darrow for his accomplishments, although she wouldn't exactly classify it as a reward. A while later, Ike teleports back to Arsenum to check on the maid, and he sees that she has eaten all the food he left for her. So he looks around and finds her sleeping behind the desk. He wakes her up, and as soon as she realizes that Ike is back, she begins begging for her life and asking Ike not to hurt her. Ike tells her to calm down since he doesn't plan on killing her, but first, he wants to know what her name is. She tells him she is called 13 since slaves here are only referred to by their numbers, but her mother used to call her Sadie. Ike tells Sadie that he can't just let her go now that she knows he is human, but she promises that she will never speak a word about his real identity to anyone. Ike believes she will keep her mouth shut, but to make sure she doesn't let the secret slip, he tells her that she has to serve as his maid from now on. Sadie is more than happy to be his maid if it means she gets to live, so it's a done deal. The next day, Ike is officially crowned ruler of a place called Avalias, and the previous day, Sapphiro had informed him that this was the reward Darrow had prepared for him. It's a town on the front lines, so Ike's job will be to rebuild the town and bring in double its tax revenue. Ike doesn't like it, especially since Sapphiro was the one that conquered the town and she absolutely decimated all the walls, leaving it with no protection. Since they are out on the front lines, they need to have city walls ready in case the human army attacks, but when Ike asks Jiren how long it will take to rebuild, he says it'll be 6 months at best. 6 months is way too much time for a city to go without a wall, but with only human laborers, there is no way they'll be able to do it any quicker than that. However, Ike believes he has a way to get it down in only 1 month, and that is to use both demon and human laborers. Jiren has never seen humans and demons working together like this, and Ike even came up with the idea to have shifts of only 8 hours, so the wall repairs can keep going 24 hours around the clock, and he also pays the laborers a decent wage to keep their morale up. So Jiren is convinced that Ike is the demon army's greatest asset, and he is bound to eventually become the next demon lord. The war between the humans and demons continues, and at the moment, the demons have the upper hand, so Darrow is rather pleased. However, their reports show that the humans are in the middle of making an alliance with a neighboring kingdom, and if they do, it may turn the tide of the war, so Darrow decides to entrust the success of their attack to Ike. Meanwhile, in the human kingdom, the knight known as White Rose Alistair has been summoned to aid the kingdom in taking back Avalias, as they can't afford to lose another stronghold. Once her assignment is issued, she leaves to go fulfill it, and at the same time, Ike and Sadie are both in the kingdom on a mission as well, but Sadie has gotten a little distracted by a scam game. The man says all she needs to do is guess where the ball is located, and if she is right, then he will double whatever amount of money she bets. Sadie makes her choice, so the man asks her to place her bet, but unfortunately, Sadie doesn't have any money to place a bet with since Ike doesn't trust her with finances. The con artist is enraged that she wasted his time like this, but then he takes a second look at Sadie and says she can pay him another way if she loses. Just then, all the cups begin floating in the air, and it is revealed that the ball was never under any of them to begin with, so all the other people who lost money to the man become enraged and threaten him to get their money back. In the middle of the commotion, Ike pulls Sadie away and tells her she isn't meant to leave his side as his maid, so she apologizes, but she was just so curious. Just then, she notices that Ike is in a new outfit, so Ike explains that they are on a mission to scout out the enemy, so he couldn't come here dressed in his demon disguise. They begin to walk through town, and as they do so, they see a platoon of soldiers walking through the streets, and that's all that Ike needed to see to confirm that the kingdom is indeed forming an alliance. Alliances like these have been formed 3 times in the past, and each time, it resulted in the demon lord being defeated and the army being pushed back to the castle. Sadie is worried the demon army might be defeated again due to this alliance, but Ike expected her to be hoping for the downfall of the demons since she is pretty much a prison right now. Sadie explains that since her mother was a slave in human society, she would never be treated as anything other than a slave and would probably end up like the destitute kids over there. In that case, Ike tells Sadie that she doesn't need to worry since the current demon army is the strongest and wisest it has ever been, so they aren't going to lose so easily. They continue walking through the street when Ike hears someone yelling for both of them to stop, so he turns around and finds that it's the con artist who's trying to confront them. He is pissed that Ike ruined his perfectly good scam, So he brought this big guy so he could rob Ike as payback for what he did. Ike looks around and sees there are no people nearby, so he decides it'll be fine to teach the con artist a little lesson. In an instant, Ike casts a spell to freeze the big guy's legs in place and follows it up with several icicles pointed at the con artist. The con artist demands that Ike remove the ice so that he can continue robbing him, but Ike just stabs him in the shoulder to show that he isn't scared to hurt him if he doesn't comply. The man finally understands the situation he is in and agrees to tell Ike anything he wants to know, so Ike asks him what all the soldiers in town are for, since they all seem to be in quite a hurry. The man initially says he doesn't know anything, but Ike threatens to kill him immediately, so he coughs up some info about the Alliance and how the Rosaria army is eager to earn some war valor for themselves before the Alliance gets involved. I can understand why they would want to do this, since a higher kill count automatically earns you more respect at any strategy meetings held. However, if they happen to fail in their mission, it would put Rosaria in a terrible position. Ike asks where they are going to launch their attack, so the con man tells him that there is only one location they could possibly be targeting right now, and that would be Avalia's. As far as the reports say, Avalia's currently has a huge hole in its walls, so it is guaranteed to be poorly defended. Ike now has a good grasp on the situation at hand, and since the con man gave him some useful info, he leaves him alone. However, he never said he would get rid of the ice though. Once they return to Ike's office, he sits at his desk to finish up some paperwork, and Sadie brings him some tea to help relax him. Just then, the demon girl bursts into the room and demands to know where Ike has been for the past few hours, since she was getting really worried about him. Ike calmly explains that he was busy scouting out the kingdom of Rosaria, but his reasonable answer doesn't make her feel better, so she starts going after Sadie and questions why Ike has a human beside him. Sadie introduces herself as Ike's maid, but the girl dismisses her and casually calls Sadie an ugly bitch, after which she then offers to become Ike's maid instead. Sadie is pissed at this point, so she tells the girl to get her hands off Ike's, since he is too tired to be dealing with hoes right now. This begins a long argument between the two, with both of them accusing each other of trying to seduce Ike, and Ike is smart enough not to get himself involved. Meanwhile, Rosaria's army has gathered outside of Valius and are getting ready to attack. They find it odd that there are almost no guards standing near the walls, but they assume it must just be due to their lack of manpower to effectively defend their stronghold. They soon inform Alistair that they have completed the preparations for the attack and are ready to fire on her command. So Alistair gives the order to fire. However, as soon as she does, several skeleton soldiers emerge from the ground and surround Alistair's forces. The soldiers prepare to defend the siege gear, since mere skeletons should be no match for them. But all of a sudden, one of the soldiers gets shot out of nowhere, and it all goes downhill for the humans from there. Alistair sees that there's no way for them to win this battle anymore, so she orders for an immediate retreat. Ike and Jiron were watching the whole thing from the top of the wall, and they commend Alistair for making the smart decision to retreat, although the only reason they managed to win was because of Ike's reconnaissance mission earlier. However, while they weren't paying attention, an assassin had managed to sneak up behind Ike and fire an arrow straight into Ike's back, causing him to fall to the ground and pass out. Meanwhile, the general has just been informed that Alistair was forced to retreat from battle due to unforeseen circumstances. The soldier tries to explain that the demon army had prepared an ambush in advance of their arrival, but the general is having none of it and orders Alistair to be jailed for losing. The soldier realizes that's a stupid move, so he tries to explain that Alistair is one of the greatest commanders in the kingdom, and he is saying he wants to throw her in jail for a single loss. That will only ruin the morale of the soldiers and affect their future battles negatively, but the general doesn't care and insists that Alistair must be punished for failing the mission he sent her on. Back at Avalius, Ike wakes up in bed after recovering from his wound, but he finds Sapphiro sleeping next to him, so he has a lot of questions to ask. First off, he wants to know why Sapphiro is in bed with him, but she avoids the question and says she saved his life, but she's making the situation sound very sus though. Eventually, Ike convinces her to be serious and tell him what happened, since he doesn't remember how he ended up like this, so she informs Ike that she healed him after he got shot in the back with an arrow. It was a devastating injury, but thanks to her healing, there shouldn't even be a scar left by now. Moving on, Sapphiro mentions that the reports say not a single human was killed during the attack. She knows Ike is averse to killing people when he doesn't need to, but he may earn the suspicion of the Demon Lord again if he keeps acting this way. Ike understands Sapphiro's point, but he is trying to find a way for humans and demons to live together without needing to fight, so needless killing would only serve to derail his plans. Sapphiro can respect Ike's dedication to finding peace between the races, so she drops the subject for now and tells Ike to stay here for now and get some rest, since he is still only human after all. Once Sapphiro is gone, Ike takes a look at the arrow that was used to shoot him. According to what he has been told, he was shot from behind, meaning either someone had to infiltrated the castle to get to him, or was it betrayal from someone close to him? Just then, Ike hears a knock at the door, so he puts his skeleton mask back on just as Sadie and Lilith come in to check on him. They were both worried about Ike. They are also still arguing about which one of them gets to seduce Ike, so Lilith tells Sadie to keep her distance from Ike while she snuggles up against his arm. However, Sadie also wants to get close to Ike, so she and Lilith both get into another fight, but luckily, Jaren comes to the rescue and quickly grabs Lilith before throwing her out of the room and locking the door. Lilith begins banging on the door and asking to be let in, but Jaren knows that she is seriously annoying Ike, so he keeps her out. Ike thanks him for his help and asks him for a favor since he wants to know where Alistair currently is. Jaren promises to look into it, so after a few hours of research, Ike is informed that Alistair has been imprisoned for her failure to reclaim Avalias. This was meant to be a simple covert mission to meet with Alistair, but unfortunately, Lilith followed him here and starts warning Ike that humans can be pretty violent at times, so it's not safe to come here in person. Ike thinks he will be fine since there's something he wants to ask Alistair in person, but he also doesn't recall asking Lilith to come with him. Lilith says it'll be more interesting with the two of them together, and after they are done with the mission, they can have as much fun as they want. Besides, Sadie got to come with him on his last mission, so it's only fair that she gets to join him on this one. Ike doesn't want to argue about it, so he allows Lilith to tag along this time, but he needs her to keep up with him. They eventually get to the front gate of the prisons, and it doesn't look like it is particularly well guarded, so Lilith believes she could probably break her way in all by herself. Ike stops her and says he doesn't want to cause a fuss, so instead he wants them to get in and out as fast and as peacefully as possible. However, Lilith had already knocked out the guards by the time he had finished talking. They head inside, and the place is a lot bigger than Ike thought it would be, so it may take a while for him to find Alistair's cell. However, Lilith has a better idea and just beats up the prison warden to get him to give up his keys and tell her where Alistair is being kept. Alistair is apparently on the top floor, but as Ike and Lilith are about to head up, the rest of the guards show up due to all the screaming they heard from the warden earlier. Lilith tells Ike to go on ahead without her while she handles the guards, but before Ike leaves, he reminds her that he doesn't want any unnecessary bloodshed. Lilith promises not to kill anyone, but as Ike is leaving, he hears the guards scream in pain with several broken bones. He ignores it for now and walks up the staircase until he arrives at what should be Alistair's prison cell, but he is shocked to find it completely empty. Just then, a girl sneaks up from behind and tries to stab Ike in the back, but he manages to evade her and pin the girl to the ground. He soon realizes that the girl is actually Alistair, so he gets off her and says he wants to ask a question. He wants to know if she sent an assassin into the castle to kill him during the last battle, because if it wasn't Alistair, then that could only mean that he has a traitor in his hands. Instead of answering right away, Alistair approaches Ike and asks if he is really a demon since he doesn't seem like one to her. Ike tries to play dumb, but as the guards begin to climb the stairs to come after him, Ike gets distracted, so Alistair seizes the opportunity to put her knife to his throat and ask him once more if he is actually a human. She wants to know if Ike is really a human or not, so even as the guards begin to close in on him, she refuses to let Ike move until she gets her answer. Since she doesn't want him to move, Ike says he won't move, but that doesn't stop him from casting a spell. So before Alistair realizes what's going on, Ike says English or Spanish. Everyone is immediately frozen in place, so Ike walks up to the guards and blows them away with a wind spell. However, in the next moment, another guard sneaks up behind Ike and attempts to strike him down with his mace. Ike manages to dodge out of the way, and once he's safe, he uses gravity magic to pin the guard to the bridge grate and eventually cause him to plummet to his doom. However, before he hits the floor, Ike casts another spell to break his fall. Alistair can't understand why Ike would go through the trouble of saving a human, but the damage to the bridge extended farther than Ike had expected, and Alistair still can't move, so the grate beneath her eventually breaks apart, and she ends up falling to her doom. However, just like the last guy, Ike saves Alistair before she hits the ground. Alistair is even more confused than before since it makes no sense for a demon to save her life, but Ike ignores her and properly introduces himself this time. He says he is the commander of the 7th Army of the Demon Lord, and Alistair realizes that he must be the general that defended Avalias against Beck troops. Ike uses the fact that he is a demon commander as proof that he couldn't possibly be a human since the demon army would never be dumb enough to let a human become a high-ranking officer in their army. Alistair now believes that Ike is a demon, so Ike reiterates his question and asks Alistair if she was the one who sent an assassin, but she stubbornly refuses to tell him anything regardless. She is a proud knight of the kingdom, so she would rather die than provide any information that could be useful to the enemy. Ike realizes she isn't going to give him the answers he's looking for, so he just walks up close to Alistair and begins using mind-reading magic on her. As he is doing this, Lilith comes in to check on him, and she is furious that Ike would be flirting with a human woman when she is right here. She tries getting Ike to hug her instead, but he has already gotten all the info he needed from Alistair's head, so he says he will be leaving now. As he and Lilith are walking out, Alistair calls out and asks why Ike went through all the trouble of breaking into the prison if he was just going to leave peacefully. So Ike tells her that he no longer has a reason to stay since he knows Alistair had nothing to do with the assassination. And while he was reading her mind, he got to see a couple of her thoughts, so he tells Alistair that she shouldn't feel so bad about losing the battle for Avalia since it is important for a commander like her to learn from her mistakes and keep moving forward. After that, he tells Lilith to get ready so they can leave, but before that, she suggests that she and Ike can go somewhere private and have a little fun first. However, Ike shuts her down and immediately opens a portal to teleport them back to the castle, and after they are gone, Alistair is left with a lot of questions about what just happened. Back at the mansion, Ike is greeted by Sadie as he returns, and he tells her that he has a present for her. She is curious to see what it is, so she goes over to him and Ike pours a bag of rice into her hand. Sadie has never seen rice before, so she has no idea what it is, prompting Ike to tell her he found it in the capital city of Lazas, and that it will help raise the productivity of Avalias. He was ordered to find a way to double the tax revenue for the town, so while Avalias already produces a lot of wheat, if they switched over to rice cultivation, he will be able to increase the productivity of the entire town. Sadie doesn't know what productivity means, so Ike takes it upon himself to explain that he means they can grow a larger amount of rice than that of wheat. This also means that they won't be needing as many farmers to help with the cultivation. And that means those people will be free to do something else with their time. So overall, the productivity of Avalias will slowly rise and it will eventually become rich. Ike asks if Sadie understands everything he just said, but her brain is still trying to process the meaning of productivity, so Ike's economics lesson was totally wasted. He simplifies it and says it means the people will get to eat lots of food and you will be able to make lots of tax money in the process. Sadie finally understands Ike's point, so in order to get things rolling, he wants Sadie to try cooking something with the rice. She has never tried cooking rice before, so she asks Ike what she is meant to do with it. However, he has no idea either since he has never seen rice before. Sadie is surprised that there are things even Ike doesn't know, but she still doesn't know what she's supposed to do with the rice. All Ike knows about it is that you're supposed to go from low to high while cooking it, so he entrusts Sadie to figure out the rest while he handles some important business in town. A few minutes later, Ike calls for Jiron to assemble all the soldiers in his army in the courtyard, and once that is done, he starts thinking of what he knows so far. The arrow that was used in the assassination attempt belonged to Alistair's army, but he read her mind and she knew nothing about any assassination attempt, which could only mean one thing. Someone attacked him and tried to make it look like it was Alistair's doing, and while he doesn't like having to suspect his soldiers, he also has to face the fact that there is likely a spy, and they are among his soldiers. He proceeds to use his mind-reading magic to scan the brains of everyone that is gathered, and eventually, after going through everyone's mind, he finds a goblin who is panicking and hoping he doesn't get caught. As soon as Ike's suspicion is confirmed, he teleports right in front of the goblin and accuses him of being a spy. A while later, Ike goes over to Sapphira's castle to ask for some advice, but he just so happens to teleport in while Sapphira was taking a bath. She doesn't seem to mind being naked in front of Ike all that much, but Ike does mind, so he says he will wait outside. Before he steps out though, Sapphira asks him if he has a traitor in his army. This gets Ike's attention as he hasn't told anyone about the spy goblin yet, so he asks how she knew about it. Sapphira says she just made a guess, so Ike tells her that the traitor behind it all was Jace, the one-eyed goblin. Sapphira isn't surprised to hear this since she had been suspicious of Jace for a while now, so as Ike asks her what he should do now, she gets up from her bath and says they are going to make Jace pay the price of betrayal. Meanwhile, back at Avalias, Jace is informed by his subordinates that Ike went to see Sapphira recently, and he doesn't understand how Ike could have recovered so quickly after they shot him through the back. But there's even more bad news for him as another subordinate comes up to him and says they've lost contact with their spy in Ike's army. Jace knows this is bad news since it likely means Ike is onto his little scheme, so he decides that he will gather his forces and attack Ike before he gets taken out. However, to his horror, he is soon informed that Ike is out in the street looking for him. Jace goes out to meet with Ike, and he puts on a nice act, saying Ike should have let him know if he was going to stop by so suddenly. Ike says he just happened to be in the area, so he wanted to pay Jace a visit alone. However, Jace pulled up with his entire squad, so Ike asks him if he is planning on starting a war or something. Jace tells Ike that this is his territory, so Ike has no business here in the first place. He also mentions that Ike got injured a while ago, so he must really be losing his edge as a commander if he let himself get struck by an arrow so easily. Ike agrees with him and says he was indeed careless back then, but he never expected to be betrayed by someone on his team, so there was no way he could have seen it coming. Since Ike knows Jace is the traitor, Jace stops acting nice and tells Ike that he was careless to come here alone since Jace's entire army will rip him to pieces now. Ike is glad to hear that Jace brought his entire army to attack him since it means he can just blow them all up at once. Jace looks to the sky, and he sees several giant meteors raining down upon them. This is the work of Sapphiro and her devastatingly destructive spell. She enjoys using it so much that she forgot to warn Ike to get out of the blast radius, although she is sure he will be fine. Meanwhile, down on the ground, Ike is totally not fine as he is forced to hide behind a building to avoid getting blown up. He had asked Sapphiro to limit her attack power so that they could rebuild this section of the city afterwards, but she obviously ignored his request because this is way too much power. After the initial volley of explosions is over, Sapphiro begins the second phase of their plan as she orders her skeleton soldiers to begin slaying all the goblins that manage to survive. As Jace watches his men die, Ike teleports behind him and offers him a choice. He can either surrender now or he can surrender once everyone is dead. And after seeing what Ike is capable of, Jace still foolishly orders his men to kill Ike. Ike uses a wind spell to blow away the two attacking him from the front, but while he was doing that, another goblin attempts to stab him in the back, but Ike prepared a shield to protect himself, and he proceeds to take out the rest of the goblins with his magic. While all this is going on, Jace is making a run for it since he never really cared about his soldiers to begin with. However, before he can make a clean getaway, he gets cut off by one of Sapphiro's monsters, so he is forced to use a smoke bomb to distract it and sneak away into the alleyway. He slinks away into a portal and appears out in the forest, so he is certain that he successfully outsmarted Ike and Sapphiro. But as he is about to go down this secret pathway, a fireball is shot at him by Ike. Jace asks how Ike could have possibly found him since no one knows about this secret path except him, so Ike explains that he had been tracking Jace with one of his familiars this entire time. He then asks Jace to surrender immediately because there's no way Jace can win or escape. Rather than surrendering, Jace decides to attack Ike, but his punches are far too weak to get through Ike's shield spell, so Ike blows him back. Jace is then bound by magic vines and hung up so that he can't escape, and this is where Jace finally admits defeat. You can see why the Demon Lord holds Ike in such high regard, and he personally thinks Ike has a lot of talent, so he has a proposal for him. He wants Ike to join forces with him so that they can take over the Demon Lord's army and get things back to how they used to be. He complains that even though demons naturally derive joy in subjugating and killing humans, she has forbidden any of them from killing humans without a good reason for it. There are many demons who don't like her way of doing things, so Jace extends an invitation to Ike to help dethrone her since she isn't fit to be a Demon Lord. Ike obviously refuses, so Jace breaks one of his hands free and throws a knife at Ike. And Ike easily dodges it, but he feels insulted that Jace really thought that would work on him. Ike begins questioning Jace on who else is plotting to overthrow the Demon Lord, but he refuses to reveal any information. Sapphiro soon shows up and she is prepared to torture Jace as much as necessary in order to get the info, but Ike pleads with her to let him try to get it peacefully since he doesn't want to hurt anyone excessively. Sapphiro complains that Ike's methods take too long, so she's going to have to take drastic measures here. Just then, Jace begins to turn purple and cry out in pain, which is surprising since Sapphiro hasn't even done anything yet, so that can only mean Jace was poisoned by the other demons in his group to keep him from spilling their secrets. Ike tries using an antidote spell, but the poison is too strong, so Jace is going to die sooner or later. Before he dies, Sapphiro asks him if he still wants to protect the identities of the people who poisoned him without a second thought, so Jace agrees to tell her who the leaders of the rebellion are so she can get revenge for him. Once they have this information, Sapphiro and Ike go to meet with Daracuden and inform her that there is a rebellion being led by the 3rd Division commander, Bastio, and since they are accusing Bastio of treason, Daracuden wants to hear what Bastio has to say for himself. This was the end of episode 3. Subscribe to not miss the next part.